Okay, I think we are live now, both on the YouTube and the LinkedIn. Therefore, you can proceed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. And I want to welcome you to the second webinar series for this mentorship program. And this evening, we'll be looking at a very important topic. I remember during my MSc period, eh, most of our lecturers were like, you guys now have the medium of getting information, since things should not be too difficult for you now on like their own time. And this is where this topic for this night is very important because now we have so much materials available, so much information. And one of the greatest challenges researchers face these days is not lack of information, but managing the overwhelming amount of literature available. You might find yourself having you downloaded like 20, 30 literature, and you're trying to find your way around how to even get the actual information. So today's session, we explore a practical technique and tools for effectively locating and reading, reviewing, and also organizing our research material. Briefly, I want to introduce our speaker for tonight. Is by the name Dr. Aziz Ishola, and his research interest is in vascular changes in health and diseases. He's a research scientist. With my understanding, his current location is Department of Cell Biology of the University of Virginia. So I want everyone to please let's welcome our speaker for tonight as he take us through managing literature, techniques and tools for locating, reading, reviewing, and organizing large volumes of research material. Let's welcome our speaker, please. Over to you, Dr. Ishola.
Thank you. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, I won't be able to on my video because there's some daddy's duty, so we just be hearing my voice for now. Yeah, so thank you for that introduction. Yeah, I'm Ishola Aziz, and I'm a research scientist at University of Virginia. So presently, my research interest is understanding the neurovascular changes in the musculoskeletal tissues in during aging and diseases. So today we'll be discussing on how to manage literature, and I think in part of the discussion we might need to I'll have to go out of the PowerPoint and just show us some practical examples of what I do. Uh, I will keep emphasizing this before I start dwelling into the details of this topic today. I would have loved it to be in a kind of interactive session, like a kind of workshop model, but I couldn't figure out how that would play out on time. So maybe if we have time subsequently, we can plan that out. But this part will be very, very important, especially for those of you who are undergoing one major degree program, either you are doing your master's or you're doing your PhD presently, and you're in the process of writing your thesis. Because what I found out most times, especially in Africa, when people come to defend, like when people defend their academic thesis or dissertation, is that uh, the examiner usually complain of either missing references, whereby student will cite some reference in text, but it's missing on the referencing list, or there are some reference listed on the referencing list, but they are not cited in text in the body of the work. And that usually causes a confusion about why is that. So this tool will help you to manage your literature document in such a way that you will be 100% sure of that every article you cited in text is reflected at the end of the document as a referencing list, so you don't have any form of missing reference. So today I'll be discussing this using this outline. So first is just to give ourselves a brief background as to what is a literature review, what does your literature review, what is the aim of doing a literature review, and what is the purpose that you want your literature review to achieve. Then we now move to how to gather adequate literature review or literature search. Then how to now manage your literature documents. And now we are in the era of AI. So just like what Dr. Dini usually says, which I am in support, is that in this era, you can't shy away of not using AI. The only thing is that you should use AI responsibly. So how can you use the AI, different AI tools to manage your literature management? I'll say this is not exhaustive. So subsequently, when we're having more discussion, we can have more informations coming out. So for the introduction, so generally when we say a literature review or a literature review or literature search is defined as a collective body of published academic and scholarly work that documents empirical research, theories, and discoveries. So meaning we have previous studies. So in simply put, previous studies. So depending on your area of research, depending on what you're doing as a form of your research, there are some studies that have done something similar. It may not be the exact, but something related. So another definition says it's a collection of articles and books that contribute to the understanding of a specific phenomena or research problems. So, so I give example, like for instance, when we're talking about interrelationship. So you see, many people have written a lot about how different nations react with each other, and they've proposed different theories that determine how different nations relate with each other. So if someone is interested in understanding or trying to do a research of how countries can interact with each other, so there are some people that have done similar things, that have documented similar things based on maybe historical events or yeah, historical event or something that they've come up with based on their own hypothesis or opinion. So looking at those documents is a form of another literature search. And for those of us, for example, people in engineering, like there is this person I usually follow on one social media that I should say that every engineering design is to solve a particular problem. And in the process of solving one problem, they create another problem. And that's how things have been evolving in terms of construction. So for those of you in the engineering field, so you understand this concept. So let's say you're trying to understand a concept in engineering, maybe a problem that arises in maybe a construction or a modeling or stuff like that. People that have done similar things, maybe in trying to solve a related problem, you see what they've done, how they arrive at the solution they arrive at, and see their way of thinking. Then you might be thinking, okay, if I can adapt some of this knowledge, tweak some of these things to give better understanding. So that's one of the things a literature search does. So it's a collection of articles, books that will help you to understand a specific phenomena or research problem. And these literature search also serve as a crucial resource, not only for we researchers alone, but for policymakers, practitioners, and researchers seeking evidence-based information. So meaning many a times people come, like for instance, there is this things I saw on LinkedIn. I think it was yesterday. There is this popular social media, I think a skit maker. He made a statement on social media, and it was like, I think the statement was that a female that's not gotten uh that's not had a previous pregnancy before, we find it hard to give birth to a male child. And you know, for someone who is in biological field, we know that that statement is incorrect, because based on empirical evidence from research done in animal and some in human that has been documented, knows that the sex of the baby is mainly determined by the chromosome carried by the male sperm that will fertilize the egg. So that tells, so literature review gives you more in-depth information about that. So seeing that statement, you see that this person make a statement out of ignorance, because this is not something that is based on evidence-based research. And sometimes people another example that I can give was there is this this one, according to the professor that taught us, because I was doing one of my statistics class when I was in my master's. Well, when they did some studies and found out that second born are more troublesome, stubborn than in the second born are the most stubborn and troublesome in terms of the position of a child in the family. So the second born are usually the stubborn one. And the person said that based on some studies they've done, and he gave a data and evidence-based data. So, but that doesn't mean we can't find exceptions. And I think another thing that was said was like, even in the chances of a female succeeding in terms of academic success is higher than that of male. And the person gave an empirical evidence based on some study that they've done, that if a female can sit down in one place to study for longer period than a male child, so than a male person. So these are things that if it is said, it might look questionable, but by the time you go into research and empirical research that have been done in the past, you see that these are evidence-based information. And if you look in our society, especially in Africa, there are many things that maybe we've been told, maybe as a form of either culture or religion or societal norm or environmental norm, that it's not based on evidence. It's just like maybe people say, and by the time we start digging into real research, we find out that this is not true. So that's what literature search helps you to achieve. So to make sure that for everything you'll be doing, it is evidence-based information. And that's why, let me say this, for I think most people that are doing their PhD will relate to this. Many of the time when you're meeting with your supervisor and you're trying to propose either a method or a design to address some of your thesis question, the next question your supervisor will be asking is, where's the evidence? Like, which study have done that to say that that will work? So everything has to be evidence-based. So you cannot just say things out of curiosity, or let me say out of, okay, I feel or I think. No. In fact, my present PI doesn't like that statement. I think no, you have to say things with evidence. Either you say, okay, this study have shown this before, then you think you can replicate something similar, or okay, you feel this thing will work theoretically because this has worked, then you aim that this thing can work. So yeah, so it has to be evidence-based, and you have to show the evidence. So that's what your literature search will help you to do, by showing you, by giving you the evidence, so that any of the decision you are making in terms of your research work and everything will be based on evidence, not just like whims and caprices of or like emotion. Now, so what's the aim of a literature review? So why do we need to do a literature review? Number one is that it helps to preserve knowledge and it shows transparency because you you are relating, or let me say, you're starting what is known in the past and trying to relate it to what you're doing presently. So like for example now, uh trying to think of a good example presently in our day world now. For every aspect of every for every concept you want to do a research on, so there is something that is known about this concept in the past, which is either based on experiment that and documented experiments based on the available tools that's available at that time. So let me give something I'm presently working on as an example. So for instance, we're studying neovascular changes in musculoskeletal structures. So the first question is, in the past, how has this been studied at all? Yes, what method have people been using before? So people have been using 2D histology to study how blood vessels changes in musculoskeletal structures when they use either aging, when they undergo aging, or when they're undergoing a disease progression like either rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis, as the case may be. So now these are things that people have done in the past by looking at the 2D histology, and they can see maybe the way the quantification looks like. Maybe they can do density and things like that and see, okay, maybe during disease progression, the density is high or low, thereabout. So that's what based on what the technique available in the past, that's what is known. Now we've now had increased advanced technology, advanced tools that can make us to do 3D imaging. So the question is, okay, if people have reported this in 2D in the past, does that result still hold water? Do we still have increased remodeling of vascular remodeling? And at one point, do we start having these vascular changes and everything? So we start talking about, okay, doing a 3D imaging to see which region having this vascular sprouting. Are they coming? Is it that they are coming from a pre-existing vessels or they are just originating on their own? So these are questions that we now start asking based on 3D. But you see, we are building our next question based on what is already known in the past. And so that's how what literature review help you to achieve. So that's part of one of the aim. So that you have to preserve the knowledge and ensure the transparency. We already know what's in the past. Another example is based on some of the one of the study we've published before. So we have this technique called tissue clearing that makes you see biological tissue optically transparent. Now, in previous when this technique was developed, it was developed specifically for brain tissue, and people have used it to study different mechanism in the brain. So we start asking, can we start adapting this technique to other organs and to study other organs? And it has been successful with some other organs like testes, lungs, liver, kidney, and everything. Then that comes with the challenge of skeletal structures because of the bone, presence of the bone. So we started, okay, we already know this works for other organs. How can we now start modulating it for us to be able to use it for skeletal structures? Okay, what can we do? So we start modulating the process, adding some additional process. Okay, part of the first challenge we have is the bone. Okay, let's see if we decalcify the bone, what will happen? So those are the things that literature review. So it helps you to to know what is already known in the past by preserving the knowledge and ensure transparency. Now, another thing again about literature review is that it gives a peer review and validation. So if you're coming with something new, it has to go through scrutiny, and it has to go through scrutiny by reviewed by experts. So most of the information you see online, especially in reputable journals, have been or peer reviewed by meaning has been evaluated by experts in the field and has been said, okay, yeah, it's fit. So, and that's what one of the things, like I mentioned earlier, is like you want to work based on empirical evidence, not just someone's uh thinking or thought process. So that, and I think that's one of the things that differentiate or dissociate science from other field like arts and social sciences, because in the world of art, someone can come, imagine something, and depending on how good the person can write, can bring his imagination into word of expression in form of novels and everything. And you can, I think they call it fiction. Yeah, so you can have fictional movies and everything. In science, you can't have fiction. It has to be something that can be validated. So because there is this competition that is used to be done is an imaging competition. So they evaluate the the artistic nature of your image that you derive from an experiment, how beautiful it is. And I can remember when I was looking at one of the criteria is that, yeah, your when you're submitting your image contest, as long as you're trying to make it artistic, like beautiful and everything, it has to be reproducible by experimental procedure. So that's what make science, scientific field, to be different from other social field, because in the other social sciences, or especially in the art field, everybody can have a different opinion. This one can have his own opinion on the subject matter. Another person can opinion another thing on the subject matter. But when it comes to science, you can't form an opinion because it has to be subjected to tests. And it is when those tests are found to be true, then it becomes like a theory kind of a thing. So so peer review will help you to subject some of this information to rigorous scrutiny. I think sometimes even if you are doing some literature based on experiment, you can read some article that as you're reading it based on maybe that the way the authors analyze their results or the way they present their data, you can start picking faults and arguing about what they are producing. So that's one of the aim of the literature review. Another thing is collaboration and continuity. So especially for those of you who are doing a PhD, if you are working on a PhD on the subject matter and you have been doing adequate literature research, you will have been seeing some names that will be appearing in the papers you are reading continuously, or some paper being referenced. Uh, the paper being referenced like most once a day, like every now and then, let me use that word, every now and then, like you see them reoccurring. So that tells you that in this subject field, there are some people that have, like, I would like put it, paved the way initially, like yeah, I would say the trailblazers. Yeah. So if for instance, as a student and you're doing a PhD on the subject matter and you will still want to continue in that, let me say, line of research. So you know that, okay, these are kind of people you should collaborate with to help you like understand that concept or subject matter more, because they've done more research in that area, like they have more knowledge concerning that area compared to maybe some other articles you're reading. So you see, you notice that trend when you are reading those articles and those papers. So that's what another thing your literature search will do for you. So for instance, if you're in Africa and you are trying to do, let's say, for example, you're trying to do a study that involves, let's say, use of a special equipment, maybe to do a surgery or something like that. And based on your literature search, you've been seeing paper coming from a particular institution in Africa or in your locality, or maybe that is doing something similar. So that tells you, okay, yeah, this is the kind of person I can collaborate with to achieve some of the aims of my research, because you have a kind of shared um, objectives in terms of um, what's the subject area you're interested in. So that tells you who to collaborate with. But if you've not done literature search, you wouldn't have that kind of information. So, so those are one of the things that literature search helps you to do, to collaborate, to identify a potential collaborator that you can collaborate with based on what you're researching on. Another thing again is continuity, because you have to know what is already known in that field. Because in research, as the word means, research, you're not reinventing the wheel. So you're not starting from the scratch. Some people already try to do the hard work. So yours is just to build upon some of the hard work that they've done. A typical example of that is one procedure I'm doing in the lab presently. I'm not the one that originates the procedure, but when I joined the lab and I saw the protocol they're using for that particular procedure, it's showing result, but it's not achieving the rest of the results. So what did I do? I sat back, look at the protocol, see what other people have done, and I tried to start borrowing from what other people have done to add to that protocol we have already to improve the efficiency. And we've gotten that. So what I have now is an improved version. So it's not like I'm starting to start the protocol from the scratch. No, it's just to improve upon what we already have. So that's the same thing about your literature search. If you are doing a research and you've not done adequate literature search, you might find out that you are just repeating a study that has already been done. And that would be a waste of resources, waste of your time. But if you're if you are if you've done adequate literature search, you'll have identified in this field, this is where the knowledge stops. So if you want to do anything, this is what I need to do to add to the knowledge and where to take it to the next step. So that's another thing about the aim of literature search, collaboration and continuation. Next is the advancement of theory. So if you have an hypothesis in mind that you've not done literature search on, what you have in mind, by the time you start doing your literature search, it gives you additional information. And based on what the new things you've already had, it makes you either tweak some of your new hypotheses, modify some of the things you have in mind. Because either part of the things you think you need to do is already been done, or some of the things you think you want to do has already, let me say, um, how will I put it? Based on, let me say, the present technological advancement, is not possible. It may not be possible, it may be possible in the next couple of years, but let's say, based on the available tools right now, what you think you want to do may not be possible based on the available tools right now. So those are the things you'll be able to identify based on literature search. Because, like, for instance, part of the thing is happening to us in the lab presently because we are trying to do something, and we've been trying to do some modifications in some of our protocols and everything, and we've not gotten the, how will I say, the best of the results we are hoping for. So, and I think the last time we had a discussion about this in one of our research meeting, we identify, okay, yeah, maybe this what we say a technical challenge, like based on the available technology right now, this is not possible. It may be possible in the next couple of years, maybe when there is an advancement in technology. But as of now, as of today, it's still not feasible. So those are the things now let you know based on literature search. Then another thing again is which most of us in Africa we don't dwell into is informing real world application. So most of the time when we do research and everything, we don't try to see how does it affect real world application, like how does it translate to how does it translate to the real world application in terms of our society and the like. So part of the things literature said does is, like we mentioned before, it's not only for the researcher alone, it's even for the policymakers and like. So when let me say this way. The serious nation that knows what she's doing, most of their policies and their activities should be based on research in that environment. So meaning if our leaders or policymakers wants to do the right thing, they should work with available research-based evidence that comes out from the environment, from the locality, rather than borrowing ideas from outside. Because some of the ideas we borrow from outside have been optimized for their own environment, and it becomes difficult trying to adapt same to another new environment. So in, in, in the real world scenario, even it's what is being advertised to startups that are starting businesses, entrepreneurs, and everything, that for you to know what to change in terms of the uh, rebranding of the company or things to do next in terms of either customer satisfaction and things like that has to come from data, available data based in that community or locality. So you can be planning or making a decision based on research data done for another company to apply it to your own company. So literature search is not only for us alone that in the academic field, it even goes beyond, and it's what's supposed to dictate or to tell us how to form policies and look at solutions that can solve problems in the society. Because most scientists might have studied the trend and everything, and they might have come up with possible solutions based on data they generated from that community. So that's one of the things, the aim of our literature search. Next, so this is similar to the previous slide, but just to give a proper context in, like, for some of us who are doing research, is that your literature search should give you a foundational knowledge on a topic. So, for instance, for those who are in biomedical science, I'm just giving an example. You want to work on addiction. By the time you do a literature search, it should give you a kind of foundational knowledge on what is addiction. But if addiction has a type, what are the mechanisms of addiction, the consequences of addiction, what has been done in terms of reducing addiction and things like that. So these should be give you, your literature is supposed to give you some of these foundational knowledge on that topic. If you're in another field, like you're working on like in engineering, for example, and you're working on maybe automation or something like that, by the time you do a literature search, you should have a foundational knowledge on
automation, maybe different models of automation and things like that. And if you're in the social science field and you're trying to talk about maybe you're looking at the environment in terms of maybe economy or things like that, by the time you do literature search, you should have a foundational knowledge on that topic. So, because if you're doing a research as a researcher, someone who's trying to build a career in research, and in your area of research that you claim you're doing, and you can't answer some basic foundational question, then that is a problem. Now, another thing your literature review search will do for you is to identify area of prior scholarship. What are the things that people have done in the past? So, so presently, I'm working majorly focusing on osteoarthritis. Now, I've known what people have done in the past because initially, when people started working on osteoarthritis, the attention, or let me say, the concept was basically made based on wear and tear of the cartilage. Like, okay, it's just because cartilage degenerates, so everybody thinks it's just a wear and tear, and they think, okay, maybe it's because of old age, because initially it was thought to be the disease of the old person. Now, people start bringing argument, okay, not all old person end up with osteoarthritis. So why are some old people getting osteoarthritis and some does not? That's another question. Now, we now even found that we have some young people that are not even old and they are coming down with osteoarthritis. So that's another thing. So you can see how the knowledge is now moving. Initially, it was thought to be, oh, it is a disease of wear and tear. It happens to the old people. Now we start saying, okay, no, not only old people. We now have young people that are having this disease. So it's not about the old. Now, okay, another thing that was brought in place, okay, it happens more in fat people, obesity. So we now know that obesity is a factor and things like that. But in recent researches that is being done and research finder is being found out now in recent time now, it's not showing that, okay, it's not only a disease of wear and tear, but it might be an inflammatory disorder. So another people are focusing on that kind of research that, okay, maybe it's an inflammatory process gone wrong. That's why we're having osteoarthritis. So you can see how people move because of the literature said we've known what people have known about this situation before, how the knowledge transfer from one form to another and things like that. Another typical example I can give again is the aspect of how the brain works. I can remember initially before the discovery of neurogenesis, the idea is that brain cells are static, meaning especially central nervous system brain, that no new neurons are born. But in the early year of 2000, early part of 2000, the neurogenesis was discovered. We now know that, okay, no, we have new neuron cells being born in the brain, and it's termed as neuroplasticity. So we know that okay, the brain is plastic, it can change, new neurons are being formed, then synapses can reform, the synapses can change, then neuroplasticity comes into play. So that is how, because of literature review, you know how knowledge or scholarly questions shift based on evidence. So another typical one is neurodegenerative disease. Initially, too, neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer, Parkinson are thought to be disease of the old people. So initially, it was thought to be a disease of the old people that is part of the aging process. Before arguments start coming out, we now have some old people that are old, but they never come down with some of these diseases. Then we start understanding some of the mechanisms that differentiate a person who is old that has the disease and the person who is old that doesn't have the disease. And based on these differences, science are now finding some new things that can probably give explanation as to why some people are coming down with the disease and some are not. And you can see how those informations are shifting. So a good literature search will give you those information and those and let me say those directions. So then another thing literature search will help you to do is to identify the inconsistencies. So where studies does not align. And I think there is a battle going on now, as even especially in the area of Alzheimer's disease and the Parkinson disease. I think the two, yeah. Sometimes when I usually read the argument on LinkedIn, I just usually laugh. For centuries, Alzheimer's disease has focused on amyloid plaques and tau pathology. So uh, I think those have been the classical hallmark of the disease. And many clinical trials that have tried to target amyloid plaques and these tau tangles are shown not to be successful. The same way initially when most of the diseases are attributed to oxidative stress and clinical trials of using antioxidant fails. So people started coming out now to show that amyloid plaques and tau are not the driver of the disease, but maybe the consequence of the disease. In fact, in terms of Parkinson, there is one man that's published a study. I didn't read the full study, I just read the abstract. And I could see the way of thinking. So what they did was like they have these in a model of inducing Parkinson. So there is this chemical. If you want to induce Parkinson in a cellular model, so there is this chemical thing, alpha-synuclein. Yeah, alpha-synuclein. There's a way you prepare that alpha-synuclein chemicals and you can put it in your culture of your cell. And the idea, or let me say, the hypothesis around that model is that in human, they found that some of the neurons left in the brain of the people suffering Parkinson usually have these Lewy body inclusions, which are from alpha-synuclein. So synucleinopathies, yeah. They call them Lewy bodies. So that when you get this alpha-synuclein and it enters into the neurons, it mimics what is found in the human brain. So like a model of Parkinson. But when this person did their own experiment, I don't know, I think they inject at a particular dose higher than what normal people usually use. So what they found out was in their primary neuronal culture, all neurons die. The only surviving neurons are the ones that have these Lewy body inclusions. So they come up with an argument that maybe these Lewy body inclusions is a coping mechanism of the surviving neuron to survive the toxic environment of the brain, while all other neurons have died off. The ones survived that have this. So meaning they argue that it is not this nucleopathy that is driving the disease, but like the neurons in trying to cope or survive the toxic environment try to compartmentalize these toxic chemicals for them to survive. Not that it is this compartment of these toxic chemicals that is killing the neurons, because they argue that if it is the toxic chemicals inclusion that is killing the neurons, then no neurons should survive based on the amount they administer. I think they administer a very high dose of the chemicals. So, but all other neurons that couldn't tolerate that amount died off. So the only one that could survive are the one that have these inclusions. So those are kind of the arguments. So when you do a literature search, for those of you who are working in Parkinson design, you come across this study. So you see how people argue, or how, let me say, based on how they interpret the results coming out from the experiments, you can see the inconsistencies between them and where they disagree, where the disagreement is. Like another study I could remember
that I came across, that I read, and I was discussing with my PI. That's before when I was working on autophagy and Alzheimer's disease. So this study, they claim in their study that, okay, in the progression of Alzheimer's disease, there is a buildup of amyloid. So they call it amyloidosis. So building up of amyloid before coming down of Alzheimer's disease. So they show that in mouse and everything. So when I was discussing with my PI then, so he was like, no, that's not true, because in human, that especially in older human, they found presence of amyloid in the brain of older human that doesn't have Alzheimer's disease. That presence of amyloid protein does not automatically translate to the development of Alzheimer's disease, that it is not the same. So you see, so you, based on your literature search, you start seeing some of these differences and areas of disagreement and things like that. So that's one thing again, your literature search will help you to identify. And if you've done literature search and you've interacted, because another mistake, which I think is mostly the problem of how most of our programs are done in Africa. I don't know, I can say for Nigeria, I don't know if other African countries have having a similar problem, but especially in Nigeria, it's like we don't usually have journal club discussion. So most of the time, when a student read an article, he tries to understand it himself or herself and try to internalize it himself or herself. So sometimes you might read an article and you can ascribe, let me say, a wrongful interpretation of what you've read. But if we have more of journal club discussion and you interact or you discuss the article with a senior colleague in that field, they can help you to understand, okay, yes, where the interpretation of the authors may be wrong, or because sometimes authors may overinterpret their results or make a claim that their result does not support. It happens a lot in some manuscripts you see online, where they will make a claim, but their result does not support that claim. So, but it is when you discuss with maybe a senior person, you can be able to identify some of these differences. So, but basically, another thing your literature review will help you to identify is that inconsistencies when there is especially in the field whereby there is opposing views. So you see that then, because you've identified inconsistencies and you've seen opposing views, it gives you it makes you identify the need for additional research, either to put a matter to rest or to show a superior argument for a mechanism. So it helps you to identify a need for additional research, because you will have seen where the gap is. If there's a knowledge gap, you will be able to have located where the knowledge gap is, at least based on what is already known. You'll be able to identify what is unknown. Like a study we are trying to do presently is a study shows that, like I mentioned, like people are now thinking osteoarthritis to be more of inflammatory immune problem rather than just wear and tear. And a study I read recently is trying to show that maybe a neutrophil plays a significant role in the development of osteoarthritis and things like that. So other people can cover with another cell marker that they think play an important role and things like that. So yeah, and the thing is, both of them, neutrophil, white blood cells and everything, may be playing a synergistic role and things like that. So that's another thing. So it helps you to identify need for additional research. Another thing a literature search will help you to do is to identify the relationship of works in the context of their condition to the topic and other works. So
like I said, especially this will happen for those of you who are doing your PhD. If you're doing PhD in a particular subject matter and you've done your literature search, if you've done adequate literature search, you will have identified maybe 2, 3, or 4 scientists that you can say, okay, they are like experts in this field because you will have seen their articles on that subject matter coming out more often, and maybe other articles you've read referencing their work more often. So when you've done adequate literature research on the subject matter, you will be able to identify the relationship of works, how one work relates to the other. And that will have helped you to place each of these contribution in their context. I remember when I was working briefly on autophagy, there is this of article that will keep coming up. It will keep coming up. I've forgotten the name of the scientist now because I've stopped reading in that line. But the one I could remember was when I was doing my PhD, when I was working on NMDA receptor and hippocampus. So if you're talking about hippocampal anatomy of the hippocampus, there is this name that keeps coming up, Amaral and Wita. They keep coming up. People keep referencing their work. So I don't know if any of you is working on hippocampus, you'll have known, like, come across 1 or 2 articles by these people. When it comes something about anatomy, you see Amaral and Wita. They always come up and people always reference their work. Then if you're working on something like an NMDA receptor, there is this scientist, I think, Herrick, and there's another one, Handyman. So you see their work coming up more often, and we see people referencing their work more often. So you will have like, okay, these are like major contributor into this field. And you will have seen the relationship of other people's work, and it will have make you to identify and place each article in their context based on the field you're working on. Now, lastly, your literature research will now help you to place your own research within the context of existing literature. Remember, the aim of doing research is not to reinvent the wheel, and it's not to reduplicate people's data, like repeat what people have already done. It's to improve on the knowledge. And by the time you've done the literature search, you will answer, okay, because remember, your literature search will help you to identify the gap in knowledge. So you already know what is missing in the body of literature. Now, by the time you're designing your own study, you're trying to make your study address some of the things that is not known. And in the process of that, definitely you too be creating a problem for another person to solve. And that's how the circle of research keep going. So literature search help you to place your own research to within the context of literature. So you know, based on what is already known, these are the things I need to add that should now be known at the end of my study. Then after then, you create more problem, another new question, okay, and another person takes it up, and the circle continues. Any question before moving to the next step? Okay, so now gathering the adequate literature review, literature search. So here you have to define your question. So this is if you want to do your literature search yourself. And I said here it is dependent on the research project. So this is very important because your how you search for information is dependent on what you're working on. So you don't, it's not always the same for everybody. And it is when you're looking for information out there, it's always good to start with a clear question. So here I just put an example here. So I just have an example here. This is not like exhaustive list. It is just example of how some questions can be framed. So you can come up with your own based on what you are working on. So like for example, I could remember when I think I used this when I was doing my PhD because I was working on a psychoactive uh, plant, trying to understand how that particular plant affects the brain to exact some of its effects. So you need to start with a clear question where you're asking any database, you're asking for questions and things like that. So, for instance, what is the prevalence of drug abuse in Africa? So here it is when I was trying to build up my proposal and like the rudimentary part of my thesis, like the introductory aspect, just to even know like is drug abuse is even a problem in Africa or things like that. So trying to see what the data shows, what the data look like. Now, so here, this actually I searched it then during my PhD thesis as well, but this actually was as a result of a discussion with a colleague of mine. So there sorry, we having this discussion, and I would say uh the notion, let me use that word, the notion in the society out there is that men abuse drug than women, that the male gender abuses drug, or yeah, I engage in drug abuse than the female gender. So we're discussing with someone and the person was talking like uh so when we made that statement like okay, like male gender is the one that usually abuses drug and things like that. So this person was like, no, based on his own experience, that he doesn't think that is correct, that he thinks female abuses drugs more because he does drug tests in an establishment and he claimed that most of the people that come to do drug tests are like maybe arrested or things like that, more female than male. So I was surprised, like, no, how is that possible and things like that. So I went to do some search on the gender that has that abuse drug more than during my PhD thesis. And to my surprise, it is even in the official document of the United Nations of Office of Drug and Crime. And they found out that yes, female gender abuses drugs more than male gender. So so it is then they now give the explanation. So they said at the start of the use of drug, the female abuses drug more than the male. But what happened is the females suffer the mortality of drug use more than male. So by the time, so if you study the population over time, if so just in kind of in trying to put a context to it. So let's say you took a population of, let's say for instance, a 16-year-old population and try to study them in terms of their drug use. At the beginning, at the start, the female gender uses drug more than the male. So if you now start studying that population over time, let's say a period of 5 years, 10 years, the female and the male that abuses drug together, more females will have died from that drug use or drug overdose than the male. So that by the time you are looking at the end point, you are seeing more male than the female. Not that more male are using drug, but because they tolerate, they are not dying more as a result of that drug use. So when I read that, so I was surprised actually. But like I said, it's a literature review that comes from empirical evidence. So you see that sometimes what you think might be this way, maybe the other way, but you can't get that fact except you've done your literature search and you've seen what people have shown based on empirical evidence. So this is just like an example of how to probe in terms of looking for information and gathering information to build your literature search or literature review. Like I said, this is just suggestive. Depending, it is always research dependent. So if, like for example, Dr. Dini is focusing on iron metabolism and the role in health and disease, especially when it has to do with the brain. If he's building his own literature search for article or things like that, definitely is not going to use this question. So someone who is in who is working not on addiction or be working on, let's say, for instance, malaria and things like that, definitely will not use this kind of research question. So your research question will always be it will be dependent on the kind of project you're working on. But in time, when you now want to look for this research, literature search, going to the different bank for information, you have to have a clear question. What are the clear questions you want to know? And it is based on that clear question that will determine the kind of return and information you will get back. Now, so these are the I'm sorry if I've not done justice for those who are in the social science and maybe engineering in this part. So this is more related to those who are in biomedical sciences. So if you are looking for information, you're looking for articles and things like that. So these are the different databases that shows you articles, research articles that have been done. PubMed, ScienceDirect.com. I have a personal bias for ScienceDirect.com. Like I prefer them. So not like a bias, like I always like to just check on them more, even than any other research. But like all these are where you can get information. PubMed, ScienceDirect.com, Web of Science, Scopus, Google Scholar, ResearchGate, even doing the quick search on Google or Copilot. So I put AI agent, yeah, ChatGPT and Copilot. Now, so this is not based on ranking. So it's not like PubMed is the best. So it's not listed based on ranking. It is just listed as the spirit leads. So, but the challenge about Google is that Google gives you information based on, I think, it just give information from every sources that you can find. Wikipedia, even some predatory journals that are online, it will give informations from that kind of journal. Like it will just supply you like those bunch of information. The reason why I prefer indexing indexing databases like PubMed, ScienceDirect, Web of Science, and Scopus is that they already have journals that are indexed in those platforms. So when you search, your results will be limited based on the journals from their own database. So meaning you can be sure of information you're getting from them to have been peer reviewed and to a certain level be reliable, at least to some certain level. Because yes, some of these journals still suffer retraction. So, but at least they will have, to some extent, erase predicted journal sources for you, which other platform like Google will not. And I think same thing with Google Scholar and ResearchGate, they will not.
because mostly ResearchGate, it is what different people uploaded on their profiles. It just gives you some of this information and everything. So even someone that have published in a predatory journal and put it on this ResearchGate profile, you can get it will be listed based on what you search. So, but if you use so especially for those who are in biomedical sciences, I usually like that if you can restrict yourself to like PubMed, like to this first four. So at least from that, you'll be sure that yes, the information you are getting are from reliable journals. And to some certain level or degree, you can rely on some of the information you are getting from there. So that's for the sources of the stuff. Now, let me quickly make mention of this. You people that are on this platform, you are very lucky. And the reason why I quickly want to mention this before I forget is that when you search some of these platform, especially for those of you who are residing in Africa, some of the time, or let me say, sometimes you can come across a particular article, a manuscript. Based on the topic, it relates, or let me say, it's relevant to what you're working on based on the topic. Sometimes when they allow you, some journals will allow you to read the abstracts. By the time you read the abstracts, you are convinced that it's related to what you are thinking. And you think having access to the full journal might help you might help you more in the research you are doing on, or maybe your thesis you are writing and everything. Then you came across the challenge of the paywall. They ask you that to subscribe or you pay for that particular journal. And this should not be the reason for you not to have access. Yes, I know there are some other platform like this Sahel that you can download some articles that are behind paywall for free there. But some articles, even if you try to use Sahel, you still can get access to them. So that's why you have to now utilize this platform to your advantage. You've already been paired to mentors. Some of these journals you are not able to access them because maybe your institution, I don't know. I think I don't know if it has changed. Most institutions in Africa are not even giving PhD students institutional emails. So part of the challenge you're having is that either the school where you're doing your program doesn't subscribe to those journals. So that's why you can now leverage on the connection you have with your mentors. Some of the institutions here may have subscription to those journals. So that's why you can send the link of that particular manuscript that you think will help you to either your mentors who are here and they can you help me download this, and they can help you to download and send to you. So for those of you who are on this platform that are actually doing the research, either your thesis or anything, that a manuscript is behind a paywall should not be the reason, especially if you are convinced that no, this article is relevant to your work. Because it's behind a paywall should not be the reason you will not be able to have access to it. So that's why you have to leverage the connection you have on this platform as a member of AYS. Talk to your mentor if they can help you download it and things like that. So I just say I should mention that now. So you see, I put the AI agent. I think we'll still discuss more on the AI agents in, I think it's most of the very part of this slide. So recently now, I think Google have done the same. I didn't put that there. So sometimes when you search something on Google, it will give you the AI summary on top before going to the details of different web links depending on your choice. Copilot is doing the same for Microsoft Edge, then ChatGPT. I think Gemini is not. I don't think Gemini is not developed for like a kind of research
activity. So ChatGPT and Copilot and everything. So please, let me mention this. I'll still reiterate this at the end too. If you search and the AI agent return maybe the quick summary, because that's how they do a summary, and they will give you a source, like, okay, based on the summary they give you, this is where they get this information. Please, please, please verify those sources before you rely on the summary of the AI. Sometimes the summary of the AI is correct, not that it's not correct, but the source that it attributed that summary, or let me say, the source it claimed it got the source, it got the information from, is wrong. So meaning, and this has been going on that scientists have tried creating awareness, and there's been a discussion. I think there is no day I look through LinkedIn, I don't see that discussion coming up or popping up, whereby we're having AI hallucination in terms of fabricating references. So initially, because it's what I have experienced, the AI fabricating references, different, like not once, not twice. So, and it will fabricate in such a way that the format of the reference will look perfect. So they'll give you a return and tell you the source. And by the time you try to check the source, you see that that article doesn't exist. Sometimes they will use a fake author's name or author's stuff, and you find out that that article doesn't exist. Sometimes they can use the real author's name. I think that's what people are now claiming, that that's another problem that is happening now. The authors will be real in terms of, like, for instance, let me give an example. Let's say I'm doing a research on tobacco. I know that Dr. Adini have published several papers on tobacco, nicotine, and things like that. If let's say I do a quick search on AI and everything, it can give me a source that will put Adeni et al. I already know Dr. Adeni published some articles on tobacco, nicotine, and everything. But if I look closely to maybe the author's list that is returned as Adeni et al., the author list may not be correct in terms of, might have put another like name of authors that even does not include in the original article that is attributing to Dr. Adeni. The last one is, which is another one, is that sometimes the article will exist, will be correct, like you can verify the article, but the article did not claim what the AI is attributing it to. So, example, the article, the AI may cite Dr. Adeni's recent article or latest article on iron metabolism in brain health and things like that to a discussion related to nicotine and tobacco. You can see that article is cited exists, but when you reach that article throughout, nicotine or tobacco was never mentioned, but it's attributing that article to the discussion about nicotine. So those are the areas where it has been shown that AI has been hallucinated. So if you use AI, maybe, because one thing, like I said, is they do a quick review. Like you can get a quick information, like you are doing, maybe just want to have a very quick information, a quick review, a quick summary. AI will give you that. But when it gives you the source, before you start transferring that source to your thesis or to your manuscript, please make sure you verify that, one, the source even exists, like that paper or that manuscript is even existing. Two, even if it exists, does the information the AI is attributing to that manuscript, is it correct? It is only when you can verify these two before you can put that reference as part of your reference or your citation. If these two are not complete, please don't. I'll still iterate that again when we get to the issue of AI. So that's what I have here.
Thank you so much, sir. It has been a very
No, I'm not
exciting.
done. I'm not
Oh, I
done.
thought he said that's all he asked for us.
No, I'm not done. I still have
Oh,
like
okay. Sorry about that, sir.
we are
Continue, sir.
we are going to the main discussion now. So
Oh,
managing
okay,
your
sir.
literature document. So how do you now manage your literature document? So here, this is where many of us usually make the mistake. I too made it. So it's not like if we've been making it, it's not like you've done something that so I have made it. So the mistake is we have this, we'll create a folder, and in each folder we have a subfolder that will be downloading articles. So we just download articles and put in those folders, and we just so we can have plenty folders and everything. So how can we now effectively manage some of our articles? Now, to effectively manage your literature documents, you need to have a literature database. So, as a student presently doing PhD, masters, these two are free, Mendeley and Zotero. So you have no option for not having any of these two on your system because they are free. EndNotes, you have to pay. So for some of you that are maybe schooling in like I know initially when I was at Rutgers, they have a subscription to EndNotes. So there they use EndNotes. So for some of you who have scholarship that are schooling in some university in the West, that your university has subscription to EndNotes, through your institutional email, you can have this. But for especially for those who are still in Africa, that your institution doesn't have subscription to this, these two, Mendeley and Zotero, they are free. Now, I use Mendeley a lot. Even when I was still in Nigeria, I use Mendeley a lot because number one is free. The other two reason why I use Mendeley is like apart from having the desktop app, they now have the Android app as well. So meaning, even if I want to read a manuscript, I want to read article, I don't need to be behind my system. So I can just be on my phone or on my tablet. Maybe if I'm traveling, I'm just driving, or if I'm traveling, I'm in the bus, or I'm just sitting down, not in my office, or like I'm just alone. You can be reading on your phone. So that's why I love Mendeley a lot. And another thing why I love Mendeley, like you can synchronize it with your Science Direct account. So you can transfer, when you do a search on Science Direct, you can automatically transfer the article that you're interested in to your Mendeley library. So you don't even need to be downloading and everything. So you can synchronize, automatically transfer it to your Mendeley library, and from there you can be reading on your phone and things like that. So, and is so as a PhD master student, you need to have at least one of these three. So, because that is how you now be able to manage your literature document. But if you're just downloading PDFs every time, you will have downloaded one article multiple times because it happens to me as well. So you just have to have a literature database. So, like I said, Mendeley is free, Zotero is free. So if you're in Africa, you can download any of these two. But if you're in the School of the West, whereby they have access to EndNote, you can download it. They pretty work the same way. Now, first,
like I said, you have to create a literature database. So, like for instance, I don't know if I can just show you quickly this. Uh, coming. Yeah, so you can see this is my own Mendeley document, and you can see. So if I click all reference, these are all articles I have on my Mendeley library, and under it I have them into different collections. So that's what I just want to show for that. So you have to create a database. So either you want to use Mendeley or you want to use Zotero or you want to use EndNote. You just have to have one out of this. Now, second, you have to create what we call a screening spreadsheet. Now, what this screening spreadsheet will do for you is to prevent reading the same paper multiple times. Because one thing that you have that is not a luxury is time. So you don't want to waste your time reading one paper multiple times. A paper you've read before, then reading it again. Except maybe you are looking like you want to read it again, but you don't want to be reading one paper multiple times. So when you do your search, Science Direct or PubMed or even Google, or you just do your search, you search based on information you want to look at, and it returns these um numerous documents to you. You screen through these documents. So firstly, I screen, for me, if I'm using Science Direct, if I punch in my keyword, it returns. Depending if I'm interested in just to read the review article, select, do a filtering, review article, then I limit my reference to like 5 years from now so that all the information I'm getting are from review articles that are published from 5 years ago up to today. So, and I have that. Then start screening based on the topic. Okay, this topic doesn't look relevant to them. So if you come across the one that the topic looks relevant, the next thing is to give the abstract and everything. Because sometimes the topic may look relevant, but when you read the abstract, you see that what they did in that study is not related. So you you uh you have to backtrack kind of a thing. So let's say you already have a, a study that you've already highlight that it's relevant. Then you have to create a screening spreadsheet. So meaning you have a spreadsheet whereby you put the name of the author, the title of the author, then the major significant findings of that paper. So like I said, that helps you to prevent reading the same paper multiple times. Now, this is optional. I've seen like the last PI I work with her, she usually work with this. She usually have this a screening spreadsheet. But I'll say it's optional because yes, I don't use it. Because what I do for my own case is I don't use I usually only go for the highly relevant papers for me especially, and I like what I showed you lastly, I already have them in collections. So I put each paper to the collections it belongs directly. So it is just, yeah, like I said, I've doing my own PhD 2 days, I've made some mistakes, which you guys are opportune now to be having this kind of discussion so that you don't make the same mistake we made. We have to improve upon what we've done. So when you have your library, so if you name your major library like a group, okay, you're working on this, then you can create a sub collection and automatically as you're putting the paper, you can put each paper into each collection uh, under your library. So or if you want to go the route of screening spreadsheet, you can have that, have the name of the author of the paper, the name, like the authors, the topic, then the major significant findings of the paper. So that's what. So you don't, that will help you not to repeat reading the same paper multiple times. Then you can read in 3 passes. So this is when you are doing your search. You can first, what you just need to do is you look at the title, abstract, the figures, and the conclusion. And what you are trying to do here is to show that if the paper is relevant. Because sometimes the topic or the title of the paper may be misleading. So from the title, you might think, from the title, you might think, oh, this paper should give you the information you're looking for. By the time you read the abstract, you will be confused a bit. When you look at their figures and what they conclude, you try to relate. Is still relevant, depending on the information you are looking for. So it's always subjective. So it's always based on what you are looking for. Now, if the paper passed this, maybe it's relevant. Sometimes looking at the title alone, you'll have screened a lot of articles away, maybe based on their title. Like for instance, if you're working on uh, uh, let's say you're working on addiction and you're working on methamphetamine as an example. Yes, you're looking for, let's say you just start mechanism of addiction and you're seeing uh, studies coming out from alcohol. Yes, alcohol too is addiction, but because you are not focusing on alcohol, you are focusing on something else. So you'll have, based on the title, you'll have screened some papers away that they are not relevant to what you're looking for. There's some, maybe they didn't mention alcohol, but by the time you read the abstract, you see that what they did is just that the alcohol. Oh, some they did cocaine. Oh, this one did methamphetamine. Okay, the one that did methamphetamine spikes your interest. Then you are more interested in what this manuscript has to offer. Then you start looking at the figures, the conclusion to see if it's relevant. Now, if a paper passes the first step, maybe it looks relevant based on your first screening, then you send it to your library to do more reading. You send it to your library to do more reading. Then in the second reading, you check through your introduction, the results, and discussion. So what you're doing here is to extract key findings, look at their methods and the limitations. And so first step is to show if this is even relevant. If it is relevant, then you now want to extract key findings, look at the methods, and identify the limitations. Remember, you are not trying to repeat what people have done. You are trying to improve on what people have reported. So you have to identify the limitations so that you be sure that the study you are doing presently is not repeating what has already been done. Then the third reading is for highly relevant, which is merely a key concept paper. This is where you read through and you make notes, you annotate. Either it may be a review article, they may make some statement that you want to argue. Maybe they make a statement that is like a widely statement in the field that you think is not correct based on some new evidence that has come up. A review article, maybe for instance, published 2-3 years ago, may make a claim that recent research that has been done in 2024, 2025, 2026 might have made that claim to be not correct. So you want to, and maybe your present result, your present studies building on this new recent advance in results. So you want to annotate to make a kind of argument. So, so the third reading is usually mainly for a key relevant concept paper. Now, then you have to create a literature matrix. So here, so like for instance, let me go to these. So you see, you have to create a literature matrix. So here you can create depending on the project you are working on. So you have to create a matrix showing how you arrange this literature that you've downloaded to show the trend. So like for instance, now here, these are all articles that are related to amyloid plaques. They will be here. These are all articles related to this particular protein. I think I did this when I was writing the proposal. Here, all articles that has to do with axonal transport. Here, all articles that has to do with this. So you have to create that matrix. So depending on what you are working on, you have to create a literature match a matrix so that you group your articles based on the central theme. So if you're searching for anything, you have to put it there. And it helps you to show the pattern of results from different studies. So you will know, okay, for example, if you administer amphetamine to, or okay, the most popular one now, which people have been doing, caffeine. When we administer caffeine to animals, they usually increase their locomotor activities and things like that. So or nicotine, yeah, nicotine too. If you administer nicotine, it increases locomotor activity of animals. So you start seeing the trend in maybe a study that did induction of Parkinson, and they tried to treat with nicotine and caffeine and see how their behavioral study looks like. Is it the same to maybe another study that did a psychoactive substance, or another study that did on Alzheimer's disease, and they administer nicotine and caffeine to see how their locomotor activity looks like. So when you start showing that matrix, grouping these papers together, it starts showing you your different the trend of different results, where the results converge. Let's say, for instance, there are some substance that maybe in rats they show positive result, but in mouse they show negative result, or maybe in Drosophila they show another different type of result. So those are the things you start noticing by start reading these papers. Then when you are organizing your paper, you don't organize the paper by by name, or just like what I showed you. You have to organize the paper by their tips. So like I say, this is just an example, like the one I showed in my file as well. It has to be dependent on the type of your research. So there is no standard name here. It has to be dependent on the kind of research you are doing. So based on the theme you want to establish, like for instance, now someone who is trying to do an analysis of maybe drug use and maybe the environment and everything. So you can have a paper that talks on drug and crime relationship. So all the papers that has to do with talking how prevalence of drug use drive violence or drive crime and things like that. So all the people that talk about that, you group them together and put them in one location in your matrix, or let me say in your library. Another example is maybe a paper that talks about gender violence and drug abuse, if they are related or if they are not related, grouped together. If you're working in biomedical, or let me say you're writing your thesis and you're working on hippocampus, you want to discuss hippocampal anatomy, all people that talk about hippocampal anatomy, you group them together. Or you're working on, let's say, for instance, autism. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and you're trying to talk about synaptic changes during development. So people that talk about synaptic pruning in development, you group them together like they are together in your library. Or if you are working on a receptor in the you want to discuss mechanism of action, all people that talk about mechanism of action of NMDR will be grouped together. So these are how you organize your paper in your library. So it's not that you create a folder, you start downloading different articles in your folder. And using this reference manager software like the
Mendeley also helps you a lot because it limits the number of space that you're even using on your disk space or your laptop or everything. So instead of downloading all the articles as a PDF file in your stuff, they are occupying the app space in your your software of your reference manager you decide to choose to use. And with that, managing your references will be easy because I don't know if we've discussed this or we're going to discuss it in the future, using the referencing manager to now start using it to write. I didn't include it in here because of time. So, but that's the thing you notice to organize your paper. Then with that, you can now track knowledge gaps. So you can have another table for each of the team you have. You start identifying what is known, what is unknown. So you can have that table to say, okay, based on what you're working on, this is what is already known in this field. This is what is yet to be known. This is what is known. This is what is yet to be done. And with that, that will help you to position your own work to be sure that you are addressing what is unknown more than repeating what is already known. So that's the thing. Then yeah, so use of AI in literature management, I think, yeah. So now it's been a while I checked Mendeley, but recently I think I checked it on Friday and I was surprised that so they've included, so most even reference manager software now have now included AI. So we now have inclusion of AI to some of the softwares. So like I said, use of AI is not bad, but you have to use it responsibly. So, and even for some of this reference manager, Acrobat is doing the same thing. You can use AI to summarize articles. So meaning you have an article you downloaded, it may be 20 pages long or 15 pages long and everything. So you can use AI to summarize some of these articles and it can help you to identify a conclusion. So if you're using AI to summarize article, fair enough, it's okay, not bad. If you're using it to identify key conclusion, fair enough, not bad. The one I saw on Mendeley, which I've not tried, so I don't know how reliable it is that if they claim if you have your library, the AI can help you scan through your library to identify the gap in knowledge and things like that. So I've not tried it, so I can't say how reliable or how confident it is, but that's part of what is being advertised on their website. Their AI tools on the Mendeley soft page. But so using AI responsibly to summarize article, to identify key conclusions and things like that, it's okay, it's fine. Please never use AI to generate a reference. Now, I saw a question briefly on the chat whereby someone asked if AI gave you information and you now want to, without a reference, that how can you cite a source? If AI give you, let's say, for instance, a statement of facts, don't tell the AI to generate a reference about that statement because in most cases, it will end up hallucinating and giving you something that doesn't exist. The little one, what you can do, which I to have done it in the past, was that statement of facts you think AI gave you that you need references, I can put it and put it on Google. If you put that statement on Google, most of the time it will return with either article that make the statement or article in which that statement is made. If you tried Google, you didn't see that, you can try every of these other databases too to see if this statement appeared in any of these articles or something similar. It might not be exact. Maybe something similar to that statement that you think, okay, is related. If you can't find any reliable article in which either that statement or something similar to it is made, you have to discard, or you declare in your manuscript that this is AI, like AI generated. I think some some journals, I don't know for policies of schools, but some journals they will tell you like they have a limit. Like if you use AI to generate some of your maybe your text and everything, it has a limit that you can put informations about okay the level of which AI used to generate. But if you tell AI to say, hey, find me the reference to this, in most cases, the AI will hallucinate. Even if it generates, let's say you still put the prompt and it generates a reference for you, you still have to verify that reference. You cannot just take that reference as it is. Like I said, the hallucination of AI can happen in such a way that it may create a reference that doesn't exist for you, or the reference may exist, but it is not that reference that make that statement. So it's still, so both are wrong. So please don't use AI to generate reference. If AI give you a statement of fact that need referencing, you can put that statement in Google to see if it will return any article. You can put it in another database to see if it will return an article or something similar. If you can't find, then you have to discard or you declare that that one is from AI. If the journal will ask, if the journal you're sending it or your school authority will accept that. Next, please never use AI to generate your manuscripts because uh, another thing that the challenge has been going on is most, in fact, some papers are being retracted now because a significant portion of the aspect of that manuscript is being generated by AI. And most of the time, AI will hallucinate by generating. I think the problem is it always generates a fake referencing, and that is not scholarly. So AI will generate fake reference, and you don't need to you can't verify that. So please don't use AI to generate your manuscript or anything. If you want to edit, maybe improve the grammar, improve the flow and everything, that's fine because you've already drafted it with your own head. Like you've already write what you want to write. You just want to edit, like giving it a third eye to do a revision for you. That is fine. But to generate a manuscript for you from the sky and say, okay, yeah, AI, I want to write on blah blah blah, let me write the introduction and everything, and it gives, please never use AI in such manner. Lastly, if you use AI to search for information, like I mentioned earlier, like just a quick summary, and it gives you some references like, okay, this is where I get my sources from. Please make sure you verify every of those references, because the present challenge about AI, especially in terms of scientific writing, is that fabrication of references because of its hallucination. So it gives either fake reference or it attributes or it attributes it may attribute the the statement to a wrong document. So and that is how you verify and manage your your references. I think that's the end of the class. Thank you very much. And we can now go to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a very wonderful time, interesting time, learning new things. We appreciate the time. And please, for anyone that asks question, can we start dropping our questions in the chat box, or we can raise her hand, so we'll mute. Okay, I think Dr. Ife is raising his hand. Dr. Awogbinde, sorry, please.
Okay, while we wait for Dr. Agbede to unmute, I saw this question from Anchor. It says, since Google Scholar indexes both repeatable and potentially predatory sources, should researchers view it as a discovery tool rather than a quality assurance tool? And what implication does this have for evidence-based literature reviews? Dr. Dini, I think, sorry, the host, okay, yeah, the family. So, yeah, so Google Scholar, yes, can index both good journals and some predatory journals, especially as they are online. And so I think most of the time, when you have how would I put it? When you have a source, let's say you're doing your search and you come across a particular manuscript or article with a particular source, and you look at the journal, depending on the information you're getting, because the problem about predatory journal, why scientists have issues with that, is that they didn't go through adequate peer review. So sometimes the information you get from there may be misleading. Having been said that, there is if informations you get from some of these journals maybe they are backed up by other informations that come from a good journal, then I can say to some extent you can rely on them. But yes, depending on your field, except let me say the profile of the people that publish the work, like maybe they are verifiable and things like that, I'll still prefer to use these first three, like the PubMed, the Science Direct, or Scopus, rather than just relying on Google Scholar. Then if I don't know, for I didn't do a good search, so but I know maybe other field like engineering may have their own standard indexing and things like that, and other field. So it's always better because with that you're getting information from a reliable, like to some extent. Now, don't forget I mentioned that even journals from like articles that are published from reputable journals, sometimes they get retracted when the issue of abnormality is being found. Like recently now, there's been a debate whereby I think even a company is being labeled that some of the Western blots they put on their product page are being falsified. So, and people have started coming out to say, yeah, they bought antibodies from this company and they never get the results that the company claimed they get. So issues like this and things like that. So even when you go through Scopus, there are some science direct journals and Scopus index journals and everything that after 5, 10 years, some of them are being retracted because of abnormality. And most of them usually come from image falsification. So that's just how science it is as it now. But the problem about predation journal generally is that they don't go through peer review. So you can't vouch for the information. So that's just so yes, to to me, if it is avoidable, I would say you should avoid it. Like go to the normal, at least just the reliable index rather than just go to Google Scholar alone. Or let me see, any information you get from Google Scholar, verify it from other sources as well. And that will like be your two-step authentication kind of a thing. Dr. How did Dr. Ife, you can continue now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ishola. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I think it's an eye opener for so many people here, including myself. Thank you so much for putting the effort. So, I just want to touch on two things. In fact, you took the word from my mouth, two-factor authentication. So, we need even to do three-factor or four-factor authentication when you are searching for papers, and you have elaborated so well on that. As for me, Google Journal, uh, my own like understanding of Google Scholar is and is a place where you can find out how people are doing in terms of productivity. But productivity doesn't match quality. You understand? So somebody can be highly productive and very poor in terms of quality. So when you are looking for quality papers, for especially when you are doing like literature review, you want to use quality paper to back up your understanding and the claims or the gaps that you say it's there. You have to look for, in fact, you have to set the standard high. You must have what I call a taste. You need to have a taste for good papers, not just all the canary paper. So I will warn you, please don't go to Google Scholar for papers. But if you want somebody to have, if you want to know maybe that person is productive, how prolific in terms of publishing, you can go there, say, because you rightly said, that place, all papers, either good or bad, you find them there. So you want to like reduce the risk of coming across bad papers as much as possible. So don't even go there. So for each of those field, they have their index points where you have reputable journals that are even constantly reviewed. Because the papers you find on PubMed today, you might go there next year and you don't find that journal there again because they might have found that maybe the journal has some sharp practices and then they got it removed. So I would prefer that place to Google Scholar. Being that as it may, one thing that Dr. Shola was emphasizing that made me to raise up my hands is the use of AI. People are now becoming so lazy now. I wanted to join the bandwagon too when the AI came out. But I wouldn't say I wanted to join, but I just wanted to, like, as a scientist, you have to be curious. And if you don't try out this thing that Dr. Shola was saying on your own, you wouldn't know. He was saying that AI will hallucinate and give you false references. You must have tried that a number of times. AI will give you some bogus claims that are not even, anywhere near the truth in terms of scientific evidence. You must have tried that. One thing because of that, I want to please emphasize is don't use AI to write. It has said he mentioned that very well, but I want to emphasize it again and again. It is very poor of any scientist to use AI to write. If you say you are a researcher, a scientist, two things I want to know about you is ability to do what? To generate ideas, number one, and ability to write up or your ideas. It's just like when you are teaching in a classroom, you don't use AI to teach. You speak from the abundance of your understanding to students. That is how you teach. And I want to encourage you guys, if you want to write, that is the first thing to do. Make sure you understand the concept. And then the very first thing you do is to write as if you are teaching. That's the first step of writing. Understand and write as if you are teaching. And it is now easier because you can use voice to text now. If you don't have the energy to write, or you might lose your coordination when you are writing and speaking at the same time, you can just speak to a microphone, and that microphone can convert your speech to text, and that gives you the foundation, originality, that you can then improve upon. So when you have that foundation, that original draft, I can tell you there is nowhere on earth that they can take it to that they will say you have used AI, unless you now send that original, blueprint to maybe ChatGPT, and that one now transform it grammatically to make it like look like it is AI that generates it. So please run away from that. Secondly, when you're using ChatGPT, I want you to dialogue with ChatGPT or any AI tool. It is not like one size fits all approach. No, provide context into whatever you are asking, and that reduces the chances of AI hallucinating. For instance, if you are looking for a paper, you don't just look, I'm looking for a paper on NMDA receptor. Provide the context in which you are looking for, in which disease condition, in which brain region, in which, when you provide this context, then AI knows you, like he's dealing with somebody who actually understands what he wants. And sometimes I've come across from my own experience with ChatGPT, will tell you, oh, I don't think this is available, but something close is there. So because I'm providing like 100% context, I don't want any rubbish thing to be generated. So please, as a trainee, as a mentee, don't use AI to write. Make sure that whatever comes out of the writing is original. That's what they call original. It's just coming out from you. And there are levels of writing. Write the first draft as if you are speaking, then modify it, and then the third level is to use the choice of words, the right choice of words when you're writing. Thank you so much, Dr. Shola, for your talk.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. So yeah, in fact, for me, AI actually hallucinate a lot because sometimes when I converse with the ChatGPT, I use ChatGPT a lot too. He made a claim that was in my paper that we published recently, and I attributed that claim to another author that we reference in another aspect of the paper. So you see, things like this happen. So you just have to like double check all what you're doing.
Okay, thank you so much,
So
sir.
there is this question again. I think
Question,
from the
yes,
same
we have a
person. Yeah.
question.
See, from the answers given now, we are saying that our focus should be more on critically appraising the quality of individual studies rather than using database source as a proxy for quality. So I want to know, are there any methodological implications? Yeah, so there are methodological implications. So let me give, I don't know the feed of this person, but let me just give an example. So let's say, for instance, now, you're doing a study on addiction. For instance, let's say MDMA. You went to Google Scholar database to generate some of these articles. Remember, we said it gives you both good, bad, and the ugly. It shows all the journals to you and everything. Now, a study, and these are happened to a journal I've reviewed for. So let's say a paper claim they administer MDMA at a particular dose to the animal, and that after they administered the dose to the animal, then they did some analysis. So let's say, for instance, they said they did blood analysis, let me serum analysis, and they did some brain analysis to check for some neurotransmitters and things like that. If we check from a predatory journal point of view, that has never been peer reviewed, so it is just what the author submitted that was published. Let's say the dose that was given was wrong. 1. 2, the author claimed they put the blood, when they collected the blood from the animal, they put it in an heparinized bottle, and it was centrifuged to collect. When you put a blood in an heparinized bottle and you centrifuge, what you get from there is plasma. In their results section, they are saying serum analysis or serum quantification. You can see the contradiction. Now, you now want to design your own study. You want to work on MDMA. You decide to look at the dose that predatory journal reported, and you decide to use that same dose. You inject the same dose to your own animal on all your animal died. Why? Because the authors of that Purdue journal reports in like they made a mistake, maybe a problem of decimal, in which if the article have gone through peer review, a peer reviewer might have picked that to say, no, it's not possible to administer this dose to an animal for it to survive. They will have no, okay, it's not possible for you to put a blood in an heparinase and you're saying you're doing serum analysis. It has to be plasma. So you can see all this contradiction. So that is what a peer review journal will give you rather than a journal that has not been peer reviewed that is predatory. Like a typical example, there is one journal I reviewed for, and it took back and forth with these particular authors up to like 8 times of revision. So what did they do? They administer a particular compound to their mice, and they did some behavioral studies and then did some histology and some immunofluorescence. Now, in their methodology section, they claimed, I think they did some PCR analysis and things like that. So, but in their methodology section, they said the brain is divided into half. One goes into the tube that to extract the RNA. One other goes into, one other was flash frozen until further analysis. And I guess for that, they want to do maybe a protein analysis, maybe Western blotting or ELISA analysis or things like that. Now, when this happened, looking at the article when I was reading, I was able to identify the inconsistencies in their method compared to the results that they claim they produce. And I was able to point that out. In fact, the reason where we have that long argument was that in one of their results section, they are presenting the same result twice in different formats. And I have to tell them, it's not possible. It's not scientifically correct. You can't be presenting the same result twice in the same. You can't be presenting the same result twice in the same article using different formats. So that's what peer review will do to make sure that what will now come out at the end of the day, to some extent, can be reliable and is sound. And that's what predatory journal will not offer to the manuscript submitted to them. So yes, and with that, if you now rely on this predatory journal, they might mislead your own methodology because you are relying on something that is wrong. So definitely what you two will do will be wrong because what you are relying on as the basis is wrong. So that's why you have to look for a very good journal, appraise a work, and make sure that like what Dr. Ife said, like Dr. Windy said, high taste said, yes, you can, to some extent, you can boost your chest that, no, this is what I'm doing is correct. Like for instance, now, one of the articles we published recently, so we administer a particular compound to label vasculature. And one of the reviewer was like, this compound is not specific to the vasculature. It can bind to other things and things like that. How are we sure it's binding to the vasculature alone? That's what. So it was not saying that we should supposed to have done a kind of another kind of analysis to show the fidelity of our protocol. That's two. Then third, that we declassify our sample. Then how are we sure that the declassification does not alter, that the solution we are using for declassification does not alter the structure of the blood vessels and things like that we did. So a bit of it. Now, when we were responding, we didn't change anything in our protocol. We are just responding by showing him previous work that has been done
that have used this method in high journal to show that it work, showing previous study that has been done, that the standard in the practice of doing, like for those who do musculoskeletal research, is that if you even want to do histology of the bone, you have to declassify the bone. So if the classification of the bone will not alter the structure of the bone, how will that alter the structure of the blood vessel? So we are applying based on authentic facts of what people have done. So just imagine that our protocol is based on a fabricated or a predatory journal, and the person point out this hole, and maybe that's not what is even used in the field per se as the gold standard, then we'll have run into problem, because in that case our experiment foundation is already flawed. We have relied on a faulty foundation. So see your literature review as a foundation of your research work. So if you are using a predatory journal, or you don't have a taste for what you use as your foundation, so you are putting both good and substandard products as your foundation, definitely the foundation will be shaky, and anything you build on it can collapse at any time. So see it from that angle. So yes, don't just rely on Google Scholar. Yes, even if you go to this major like PubMed and everything, and you are reading an article, and that's why I said, yeah, we might have that challenge in terms of Africa, because we don't do more journal club. Here, even if here, we see a journal you think makes sense and everything, we still discuss it. Look at this, look at the journal, look at what they report. Is this true? Does their results support the claim they are making? Is the methodology, does it support the kind of results they generate? And then you can now say, okay, yes, this is correct. Like for instance, let me give you a typical example that is happening to me right now. My PI saw an article whereby they did a micro-CT study, and they used that micro-CT to identify the volume of the cartilage and everything. So it was like, okay, if I can do something like that. So on that spot, I was letting him know what that will not be possible in our own study, because in their own study, what they did was like it's an end stage assessment whereby they already killed the mice, treated the musculoskeletal structure with some chemicals to actually stain the cartilage before going into the micro-CT. In our own case, we are trying to evaluate a longitudinal study to see, so we don't want to kill the mice. So there is no way the dye, I can treat the leg of the dye to stain for the cartilage for me to now say I'm doing micro-CT, because what we are doing is a live micro-CT. And when I was discussing with the technician, so what the live micro-CT will show you is the bone. It can't show you the cartilage. We tried to say, okay, what if we use MRI? They're like, oh, based on the MRI machine they have presently, the configuration will not allow us to see a mouse name, because the mouse is too small. That if we had to be rats, it would have been okay, but mouse, it won't work. So mouse is a no-no. So instead of wasting money, we can't get what it does. So that's how your literature review can impact on what you are doing in terms of your own methodology and what you'll be generating moving forward. So yes, it is very important to appraise each manuscript individually and be sure that you are working based on a sound manuscript rather than just collecting every manuscript you come across and say you are building a short review. No, that will not work. Do we still have another question? I don't know. I'm seeing some messages on the WhatsApp group. I don't know if some people are dropping their messages there. Can you check the moderator just to be sure?
No, there are no messages and there are no questions. The messages are no questions. Thank you so much, sir, for the very long class, but it's worth the time. Take me for example, I'm a Google Scholar lover, but hearing so much about it tonight, wow. I've been shaking my head right here. So thank you so much, sir. I don't know if Dr. Adeniyi has anything to add before we close. And for anyone that still has question, we can drop it on the general group. the questions will be addressed. Dr. Adeniyi, sir. Okay, so I think maybe doesn't have. Thank you so much, Dr. Ishola, for the insightful and practical presentation. Thank you so much. And on behalf of AYSMP, I sincerely appreciate you. And we'll definitely, as new set of mentees, we're going to make you proud. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hoping to see you again, maybe in the next 2 weeks as the webinar series continues. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy yourself. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.